This is Rob Carmack from Bruce Springsteen Sings the Alphabet, and when I'm not eating a pound of caviar, I'm listening to Set Lusting Bruce.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. And we are doing a return. Michael, better known as the Jukebox graduate, is joining me because we had so much fun the first time he was here that we ran out of time, and I said, Michael, you got to come back because we got to talk about more things. And Michael was nice enough to say yes. So, how you doing, Michael?
Oh, great, Jesse. Glad to talk to you. I had a lot of fun last time.
I did too. I thought. And so, why don't you give a quick summary to someone who didn't listen to the first one, or just a reminder if they did, who you are, and we'll go from there.
Well, quite a few people know me because I am a school teacher in North Carolina, and my school sponsored the only Bruce Springsteen club for middle school, at a middle school for middle school kids. And the club did all sorts of cool things. We've been to 7 concerts. Greensboro would have been our 8th if there wasn't a change of plans. And they did a weekly radio show. They were featured on Sirius, E Street Radio on Sirius 2 years in a row. The kids did all sorts of cool things. And their reputation kind of spread as a bunch of middle school kids that had a Springsteen club. So it was kind of cool.
Very cool. And we kind of talked about that. We talked about the genesis and about you teaching and how this was not something you forced the children to do. It was actually something they embraced. And so that's very cool. So I know that we had some of the things you didn't get to talk. We ran out of time before we got to talk about you guys being on Sirius Radio and your introduction with the tour of Ashbury Park with Stan. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the adventures that we didn't cover in the first one, and then we'll go to some of your more personal experiences.
Sure. And if you haven't noticed, I have quite a bit to say about Bruce, but none are more dear to my heart than things involving the club. In fact, people were talking about live shows recently, and someone was really unhappy with the Raleigh show for some reason. And I was like, that was one of my favorites. And they were like, yeah, but you brought all those kids. And anytime you bring the kids, it puts you on a different, your mindset is different because you have the kids and you have so much fun bringing and introducing the kids to the Bruce show. So yes, anytime people want to talk about Bruce, it comes back to the club and how the kids have been influenced by the club and how important it was to them. And of course, that makes me happy knowing that I, in some way, in part, responsible for kids being turned on to Bruce.
Yeah,
absolutely. And like you said, I didn't force it on any of them. It's just something that grew kind of almost accidentally, but it filled a need that a lot of these kids had. And I think Bruce is that way with a lot of people. It fills a need because he touches so many different people. And for this particular group of kids, it filled a need that a lot of these kids had. So it turned out to be a very positive and a very life-affirming type of situation.
Absolutely. So talk to me. How did you guys end up being on E Street Radio?
Well, and again, I don't remember because when I first got involved with the club and was trying to find, because when we started the club, We had no idea what the kids were going to do. They begged me to start the club, if you remember from last time. It wasn't me. They begged me to start the club. And I'm like, what am I going to do with a bunch of middle schoolers? And Bruce, I mean, I had some ideas, but I didn't know a real tie. And so I sent out different feelers. And when they started doing the radio show, I was looking for just different and unique things. In fact, that's how I ended up attending the Super Bowls, because I was trying to find something for the kids to do. But so they started doing this radio show. We started at a local high school, and then we got an offer from a commercial radio station in Boone, North Carolina. And then we ended up at Lenore Ryan University and eventually at Duke University. But at some point in that process, we got an email from Sirius, from E Street Radio, and they said, sure, we'd love to have the kids on. And and you talk about an adventure, that became an adventure, because they said, hey, do you want to do it on, over the phone? You want to do it some distance type of situation? And I said, no way. I want the kids to go to New York City. And
wow.
we ended up, and you talk about an adventure. It was quite an adventure. And I say that because there were 18 students and me, and I believe there were 4 or 5 adults, and we didn't go through the proper school channels. We did it during a holiday break, and we just went. And actually, a funny story about that, I basically funded the 7 concerts we went to. I funded the weekly meetings, and I basically funded the whole trip to New York City. So getting hotel rooms in New York City and doing that kind of thing, there was no way it was going to happen. So I called up my brother, and I said, dude, you live in Connecticut right outside New York City. I'm bringing 20 people to stay at your house while we go back and forth to New York City. And he's like, no problem. I said, make sure your wife knows. So the day before we were leaving,
right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, that's funny.
Exactly. Well, that's the way I do things. I don't do things organized and make plans and do all that stuff, because that takes half the fun out of it. So the day before we were leaving, I had a classroom filled with snacks and stuff and everything. I go, I'd better check with my sister-in-law, because my brother's he doesn't pass along information so much. So I called her and I said, Cynthia, we're coming, right? She goes, he told me yesterday. And I go, well, too late to stop the train. It's on its way. So you better be ready. She's like, no problem, man. So all the way
What
up.
What a cool sister.
Oh yeah, I have a great sister-in-law. She's wonderful. She tolerates that type of stuff. I show up in the middle of the night, and I always have a place to stay. And this one time, I happened to there were 22 of us.
Yeah.
So it was fun. And it's kind of funny, because the boys were all freaked out, because I said the boys are all staying on the basement, and the girls are all staying upstairs, and because we're middle schoolers. And the boys were all stressed. They're like, how moldy is it going to be? And, all this stuff. And I was like, oh, you guys will be okay. We'll try to pump all the water out of the basement. And of course, my brother's house is pretty nice. And they had lush accommodations. They all had airbags and stuff. So it was not, It wasn't the Ritz by any means, but we had a nice place to stay. We all fit comfortably. And it was just part of the fun. They loved it. The whole thing was fun. From the time we left to the time we got back, we had a blast.
How long of a road trip is that?
Miles or days or?
Just time-wise.
We were there, travel time and everything. It was almost a week. It was
Okay.
our April vacation. We stayed almost a week. It's about 750 miles. It was like for me, 12-hour drive, but with all the kids and multiple stops. It was, 14 hours.
And were you in a caravan? Were you had a bus or?
We because we did it, like I said, without official permission, I had rented an 18-passenger van or something, a 20-passenger van. So it was me, one parent, and all the kids in one van, and 2 little parent, regular like Dodge Caravan type vans. So basically 3 vehicles heading north, with a U-Haul trailer on the back with air mattresses, sleeping bags, and whatever other stuff we had to carry.
Oh, that's just so fun.
And I will tell you that the kid van had way, way, way more fun than the two adult vans. We were way more fun.
Oh, sure. I bet.
It was fun. That's all I could say. I don't know how to describe it. It was just the ride was fun. The trip was fun. We did so many cool things. Just keep in mind, 18 students, none had been out of North Carolina before. Most hadn't been out of our little 3-county area. And these kids were seeing things like, we went on the Long Island Ferry. We got to see the Statue of Liberty, Central Park, Greenwich Village, Chinatown. We went to the Met, which in itself is awesome. We went to the World Trade Center Memorial thing. We went to Washington Square Park. They went everywhere. Everywhere in New York I could take them, we went.
And Michael, it is very cool, not only you doing this, but really cool the couple of parents that, kind of signed up and said, hey, we'll help chaperone. Let's do this. That makes it very cool.
It was, and I was fortunate. I had some really good parents, and the parents who didn't go were equally cool because they, in hindsight, they're saying, hey, Mr. T, we trust you enough that you could take our most prized possession on a road trip to New York City without us there. So they were actually the more, I was more impressed with those parents. And actually I put so much, it touched me so much that they were willing to let me take their kids on that type of a trip without them being present. So
Absolutely.
To me, that kind of showed how they felt. Like, hey, we trust you enough.
Yeah,
these are our kids,
awesome.
So, and it was great because when we got back, the kids all had to talk about their favorite part of the trip.
Right.
And every one of them had different things to say. Like two of the girls, they were sisters, twin sisters. They said their favorite part. Well, first of all, we had the club T-shirts that we all have to wear. And when I first we sat there with the T-shirt maker making literally 100 shirts because everybody had to have 5 because we were going to be there a week. And we have different versions, so we all wore the same shirt, so it was like a uniform. And a couple people were like, can't we just wear something cool? We're going to be in the city. And I'm like, no, we got to be identifiable. We got to be able to stay together and find each other. So because we were all wearing the shirt, people were stopping us. And the two girls said their favorite part, we were in Greenwich Village, and a famous photographer guy was out taking pictures, and they stopped us, and they were interested in the club, and he made us do like a photo shoot. And then they had the kids singing Thunder Road in the center of Greenwich Village at full blast. And the two girls said that was their favorite part, just being stopped on the street by complete strangers who acknowledged the club and made them sing Bruce songs. So
yeah, that's very cool.
And to them, that was the best part. Every person had different favorite parts. Sarah, we were very, very fortunate that we made friends with Vinny Mad Dog Lopez, one of the great drummers of all time, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member. And he was so nice to the kids. He came out and he showed them around Asbury Park and kind of stole Stan's show and took the kids to play. He's a regular local hero because he took kids to places that were closed during the day, but he got them to open it up and took the kids to different clubs and to the convention center and to other really cool places. And we said, hey, Vinny, we want to see you play. And he agreed to go with us and rode with us down to Atlantic City so he could play with a tribute band and play drums for the kids. And on the ride back, there was just a couple of the students and Vinny and I and one of the adults, and he was telling them stories of the E Street Band, the early days. And they were just in awe. The kids were just in awe of his stories because they were getting a part of the E Street Band that not everyone hears, But the story that now, if you read Bruce's book, some of the stories were in there about Bruce driving cross country and not knowing how to shift, so they had to start the car and switch seats while it was moving and all that.
Yeah.
But Vinny was telling us all those stories, and the kids were just. Sarah said that was her favorite part of the trip was just like meeting and hanging out with Vinny Mad Dog Lopez. So, so every student had a different thing they took away from the trip that they thought was the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And like I said, Stan gave us a tour around Asbury Park, and I know Stan's been on your podcast a few times, and Stan's an awesome, awesome guy, and anyone who hits Asbury Park should look him up and take that tour because it's really an interesting tour. And he did it for us as a favor to the kids. I still always say I owe him because of that, because he really took good care of the kids. And by the time we got there, they were they had been running on empty by that point. So he did a great job of showing the kids and making it interesting for them.
That's awesome. It is kind of, you're investing in the future. You're investing in the next generation of fans. And I agree. I was lucky enough in August to do Stan's tour and had a blast. Once they got on this, so all the kids were in the studio for E Street, right?
Okay, and actually, we were on E Street 2 years in a row.
Okay.
The first year was done live. We went there, and not all the kids were on there.
Okay.
We had so many were supposed to go. I think it was eight kids were allowed because of time.
Right.
And we chose, the way we did it, that everybody went up there, and they all got. There were a couple things where they all did get to go in the studio. We kind of made sure, because you don't want to leave any kids out. So they all did things like they got to do intros and outros, and they all got in the studio, and they all got to perform. But only, I think, 8 of them told their stories, like what Bruce meant to them. And they were basically doing a edition of, where people go on E Street and tell their stories.
Right.
So, not be the boss, but the other one. But the kids loved it. They were actually in this. We normally record in these little college radio stations, and obviously Sirius XM is Sirius, and just really cool. The scope of what they were doing. They just felt like pros. They felt like they were on the top of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just the fact they were in there and getting treated the way they were, and they were treated like little stars. That they just all came out of that just happy as could be. And and I was happy. I was happy that I was able to help, get the kids there.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And,
okay. Nice.
And of course, we worked closely with Jim Rotolo, and anyone who listens to E Street Radio knows Jim. Jim's a great, great, great guy.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he is. Dave Marsh talked well about the kids, but the whole experience with E Street was incredible. We had a second. If you
go ahead,
want, I could tell you about second. The
sure,
second one was different. I got an email a year later from a guy named Vinny, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'm taking over for a couple weeks. We want your kids to introduce every song for the entire, I think it was Labor Day weekend. Could you get your kids? Could you have them throw something together where the kids introduce different songs, And he's like, we probably need 20, 30, but we'll replay them all weekend. And the whole weekend is your kids. They were doing a weekend of children, something to do with children. And they contacted me and said, hey, we want your kids to introduce stuff. So it was the first week of the school year. We're not even back to recording yet. The kids are just getting back. We would leave the middle school and run to the high school, and we'd record from like 3:30 to 6 or something every day, 4 days a week, the first 4 days a week. And then I'd go home and edit the clips until like 2 in the morning. And we did this for the whole week. I had no sleep for a week. When we sent them, I think we sent them 120 intros. And Vinny was like, this is unbelievable. These are great. Yeah, he was like, unbelievable. I wanted 20 or 30, and you sent me 120. And they played Labor Day weekend. Every song that they introduced on E Street Radio, there was only like one for Born to Run, one for Born in the USA. They did 108 songs or some crazy number, and a lot of them are actually loaded up on my webpage that people could hear, and they're really cool. So yeah, the kids got featured all weekend. They introduced, they would play. They had their whole advertisement for, hey, this weekend, here are the kids of Granite Falls Middle School, and they went through the whole. It was really cool. They got advertised. They got promoted. It was just really cool.
That sounds really cool. Very nice. That is very cool. Um,
As I
now,
said, everything to do with the club, and which is why you have a hard time stopping me, and that's why our
yeah,
show ran over so long. When you start talking about the club and all they've done and what it meant to the kids and what it meant to everybody involved with the whole thing, there's no negatives. Like everything was positive, and you can just talk about it endlessly. As people who know me know, I can. So,
so Michael, do you hear from them sometimes?
oh yeah, I run into kids all the time. In fact, a couple of our traveling partners that we take with us, that the end of the tour when he was playing the almost 4-hour shows. A couple of the people that came with us almost every night were former club members who are now freshmen in college. They're older. They refuse to stop going. And yeah, they're like part of the family now.
That is absolutely great. All right,
Yep.
so we're going to move away a little bit from the kids now, and we're going to talk a little bit on a more personal level. And you've sent me a couple of notes, so I'm going to just kind of lead you based on. So tell me about the Cynthia story.
To me, when I tell Bruce stories, almost like, and when I say tell stories, when I start talking Bruce with friends or other Bruce fans, almost none of the things that I remember that I talk about involved what songs he's played, the show itself, meeting them, none of that stuff. All that stuff, to me, everyone has those stories, and mine, they're not that interesting. Most of the things that I find interesting are either catastrophes or weird things, or my favorite story is the one you just asked me about. A few years back, quite a few years back, it was 1992. He did the 11 shows in the Meadowlands. And I waited in line, I believe, for the first 9 for those tickets they would drop right before showtime, and they'd be really good seats down there on the stage. But you had to wait in line all day. Sometimes you had to wait in line a couple days. Well, the first 9 days, I waited in line, and I got good seats. I went to the first 9 shows. And the 10th night, I was taking my little cousin. She was probably 12. And I couldn't wait in line because I had to wait for her. And I don't remember if she was getting out of school or whatever. But I asked a good friend of mine, I said, hey, do me a favor, too. Get me 2 tickets. You're in line. You're going to be there all day. Get me 2 tickets. So I drive down from Connecticut. And the 11 shows, I drove back and forth from Connecticut. But on this 10th show, I was driving down from Connecticut thinking, I got 2 tickets. My buddy's taking care of me. And I get down there with my little cousin who was going to see her first show. And I find my friend, and he's all excited. I got second row. I'm so happy. And I go, cool. How did I do? And he goes, couldn't get you any. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. I know it's hard. Things happen. And I go, but what happened? He goes, well, they had a 2-ticket limit. I go, how many did you get? He goes, 2. I go, how many did your girlfriend get? He gave me this look like he never thought that her did. So I'm like, okay, I can deal with it. He got his second row, and I was forgotten, and I just walked away going, okay. So my cousin and I are in the second level, 200 level, probably the last time I've ever sat up there, and I'm looking down the whole night going, So Glory Days comes on. This is back in 92, before, when people never got on stage with Bruce. I mean, I know that's been going on this tour where people dancing in the dark. And unless your name was Courtney Cox, almost never did people get on stage. I look down, and there's my friend on stage during Glory Days with Bruce.
Wow.
And I'm like, so now I'm sitting up there going, great. So I was happy for him. I mean, I'm joking.
Sure.
Years later, I make jokes. But I'm telling the whole, I'm looking down being angry for effect. But really, I was happy for him. But as I'm looking down, I'm like, So that night, I'm out in the parking lot, and I'm sitting talking to these people I never met. A girl named Cynthia and her husband Mike, and we were chatting, and I told them, I'm sorry?
That's what you do, right? You make friends.
That's what you do, yeah. You make friends. And so I'm talking to this young couple, and I was telling them how I couldn't wait in line and how my friend was one of the guys on stage, and he had gotten second row. And the 11th night, the hardest night to have tickets for, I couldn't wait in line again because there was a girl that I was chasing for like a year that I was finally convinced to go to the show, but I had no tickets and I couldn't wait in line because I can't ask her the first time we ever went anywhere to wait in line for 10 hours. And they go, we'll get you tickets. And I go, really? I don't even know you guys. So I give them all the money I have, which was enough for 2 tickets. And this is back before cell phones and all that. And I don't have their last names. I don't know who they are. I walk away going, I just gave someone money that I'm never going to see again. I'm never going to run into them. And I basically just threw away some money. But then I go back and the girl and I, you know, we start driving down from Connecticut the day of the show. And the whole time she's going, we're not going to get tickets. There's no way. You're never going to find these people. And I'm like, no problem. I know them. They're great. We'll meet. And the whole time down there inside, I'm going, I have no chance of finding them. It's the Meadowlands for sake. And I'm like, how am I going to find them? I didn't take a phone number. I didn't even get their name other than Cynthia and Mike. And of course, I'm trying to impress this girl that was so far out of my league that I'm like, no, we're fine. This is great. We're going to have a great night. And the whole way down, I'm sweating bullets. And so we cross over the bridge. We get into Jersey. We pull into, it's so crowded. We have to park on the football stadium side. And you walk across this overpass down onto the side with the Meadowlands where the arena is. So I'm over there, and now I'm really nervous because as I'm walking, people are yelling out, I need tickets. I'll pay $500. Tickets. Anyone who's got tickets. And I have none. And I have no chance of finding these people. But we walk down the stairs, and right there at the foot of the stairs from the football stadium side, there they are, almost like a Bruce song, sitting on the hood of a car. And I'm looking at them, and I'm afraid to walk up. And I put my fingernail in my teeth. I'm like, oh, that nervous thing, you know, where you walk up and you're like, huh. And they go, big smile. Cynthia reaches in her pocket and pulls out 2 tickets. And I'm like, yes. And I look at him. There's, I think, section 114 down there at the stage, really good seat. And I go, awesome. And I'm all happy. And I'm like, see, I told you. And I go, so where are yours? We couldn't get ourselves any. I go, what? She goes, they had a 1 ticket limit. And I go, no, I can't take these. She goes, go have fun. Cynthia and her husband, Mike, gave me these 2 primo seats to the 11th night of a homestand in New Jersey and couldn't get themselves tickets. And right there, that story tells you what you love about the Springsteen community. They gave up their seats for me, a complete and total stranger. How many years later? 25 years later, can't even remember the name of the girl I was impressing. Cynthia and I, still good friends. Jesse. Jesse.
So that is wonderful.
Sorry, I thought I lost you there.
No, you did. You didn't. That is a wonderful story. I was almost speechless. I mean, to have a friend that long, you know, and all just because of kindness, and you know, to give up, you know, we could only get 2, so we got them for you. You're right. That is everything that's wonderful about Bruce and the fandom of the people that support him. That's just amazing.
It's amazing. And like I said, years later, we're still friends. I see Cynthia at a lot of shows, and it's one of those things that basically sums up what you like about going to Bruce shows.
Yes.
I mean, if that story doesn't get you,
right,
what does?
Exactly.
So, and now I've tried to repay her a few times in the past.
Sure.
I've repaid her a couple times. I remember one time she couldn't wait for tickets, and I got tickets. I think it was for the Garden, and I had bought a bunch of tickets, and she was like, Mike, and I know what she's dying to ask, because my son, who was probably 10 at the time, and I went and got tickets, and she was dying to ask who gets first choice. I go, Cynthia, you get first choice. You know, don't worry. But
yes.
Like I said, I have paid her back, but in the end,
In my mind,
whatever it is,
yeah.
25 years later, that's still my favorite story because it shows the connection between Bruce Harris, between the so-called community,
Yeah.
and or at least the good side of the Bruce community, and there is a really, really good side to the Bruce community, and that story typifies it, or explains, basically sums it up.
I totally agree. What's the 3 accordion story?
Oh, that was just, and if you ask me the questions off our little talking points, some of them are going to sound dumb, but they're just notes for me to remember. People ask me about shows, and as you and I talked last time, I've been to a lot of shows. I don't tell how many. People, only a very small circle of my friends know how many shows I've really been to. But to put in perspective, my son, who's only been to one show without me, who's in his 20s, is up to, I think, 158 or something like that, and that's it. So
yeah.
I go to a lot of shows, but I have no memory of like where I was and it's because it's kind of like I was telling someone, you go to a show in Cleveland, you go, oh, Detroit's only a few hours away. I think you go there, and then you go, well, wherever, it's only a couple hours away. And one day you wake up in California, 3,000 miles from home, and the tour's over, and you have no money, and you have no way back. And it's like, what
did I do?
Now?
Yes.
Yeah, what do I do now? So when you ask me about specific shows,
right,
I'm like, I don't remember. I don't remember. Well, my son and I went to two shows, and this was just to explain how limited my memory is. My son and I went to 2 shows. I think they were back-to-back nights in Florida. And we're outside the show right after the show ended, and we're talking about how good the show was and stuff. And I go, yeah, but it wasn't as good as last night when they had 3 accordions on stage. And Andrew gives me that funny look like he always does. And he goes, that was tonight. I go, no, you remember last night? It was, Nils and Charlie and Gary. They all had accordions, and they were playing whatever. And he's looking at me like an idiot. He's like, that was tonight. And I'm like, no, last night. And we're arguing over. We pull out our phones, and we look at the set list. It was tonight. He's like, it was an hour ago. How brain dead are you that you don't remember something from an hour ago? I'm like, I thought it was last night. It's just the way we travel. I people who've only met me on the booze tours is like, this is one hyper maniac dude, but
yeah,
I'm really kind of mellow. But because when Bruce is on tour, I drive places nonstop. I don't drink caffeine year round, but when Bruce is on tour, to get to Washington and back 3 times in 1 week without missing school the next day, I'm all caffeined up, and my memory, I've just killed all my brain cells. So I can't tell you what was played an hour earlier. So,
well, what I love about that story is it reminds me, I remember years ago when I was very young, but I remember seeing Richard Pryor on Johnny Carson, and my younger audience is now going, who are those people? But and Richard Pryor makes the joke about when you're doing 2 sets a night, he says every once in a while you tell the joke and you've told it once before, but it's the exact same show you've told it. And he says, and the audience stares at him like, yeah, you already told us that one. Except Richard Pryor, of course, was a little more colorful.
Right. Colorful.
Yeah. Right. So right? Like, that's funny. That show, we just saw that, Dad. So let's talk about. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, it's kind of like one of my favorite stories that I repeat, that I tell people, that really sums up my mental state. I have a good buddy named Dan. He's a retired school teacher. He travels with us quite a bit when he can find the time. He's retired, but he has a hard time finding the time. And we were traveling to 2 shows in Madison Square Garden. There was the first night, Bruce was playing the Wild Enos and the E Street Shuffle in its entirety, which was an incredible show.
Right.
I was, you're blown away by that. Just strings and stuff that he used. It was an incredible show. The next night he was playing The River. And I swore that The River, I wanted to go, of course, but I swore he couldn't pull it off. The River just has too many slow songs, and There's no way that would make for a good concert, but
Right.
I'm going, of course. How wrong I was, because an entire tour grew out of that show. But so we go there, and we're staying at my buddy gets a hotel room, and we're staying with him. And in the morning, we went to the first night, and of course we stayed up till 3 in the morning, whatever. And Andrew's asleep in the bed, college-age kid, sound asleep, and Dan and I are up. And we're trying to remember the 20 songs he's going to play off the river in order, you know. We're trying to remember them. We've got 19 songs. The Ties That Bind, Fade Away, Hungry Heart. We can't think of the 20th song, and we're not looking it up. We're not cheating.
Yeah,
we
we're
have 19, and we're kicked off. So we start thinking of all the fast ones. We start thinking of all the slow ones and all the ones that we, you know, would love to see. We attack it from every known angle to figure out that stinking 20th song, and we can't get it. So finally, we give up and we shake my son. And he's got this long hair. He looks like Jesus, and his hair's all stuck to his face, and he's sound asleep like a college kid would be at 7 in the morning and we shake him, and he looks up, and he's all hair stuck to his face and stuff. And he's like, "You freaking idiots woke me up just to tell you the 20th song on the River album?" And it's The River. We forgot The River. 45 minutes, we forgot The River. So to this day, I get emails from friends who go, "Hey, Mike, I got a great trivia question for your students. Here's the songs from the Born in the USA album. Which one's missing?" And, you know, it's Born in the USA, you know, or Darkness or Tunnel, whatever. So I've been taking heat for that. But that's a true story. 2 grown adults forget The River.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, Michael, talk about, there is a lot of discussion, and there is the financial aspect of going to shows and paying for it. But you have a few notes here, and you've kind of talked already about ending up in California with no money left. What do you do to kind of help? Like, I go to the most shows I've gone to ever on a tour was this past year with 5, and luckily 2 of them I had to fly to. One of them was here in Dallas, one of them was Oklahoma City, driving, and then I ended up flying to Jersey. But you know, when you're doing that road trip and you've got the time off from work, you talk about how do you make your dollar stretch, and how do you make that happen?
You know, people always use money as an excuse for not going to shows.
Right.
And I completely and totally 100% get it. When you have responsibilities, when you have bills, when you do that kind of stuff, you know, there are priorities. We all have priorities. My son has learned from a young age. We could either go to a lot of shows really badly, or we could go to a handful of shows and do it right. Many people prefer the latter. They get a hotel room in the city. They get up and they go to the venue. They have a nice dinner. They have a few drinks. They buy souvenirs. They go through all that. Absolute polar opposite of what we do.
Okay.
We drive everywhere.
Okay.
Because I have to justify what each show costs.
Right.
So we drive everywhere. We almost never get hotel rooms. If it's just Andrew and I, he's been my travel partner for 20-something years.
Yeah.
We travel. We stay in rest areas. We're bums. We've learned to be almost homeless people. Never in all the shows we went to, and people are going to find this absolutely ridiculous, we have never bought a food item or a souvenir. In all the shows we've been to, never once, except in Tampa. It was a blazing hot day, and I was afraid that he was going to die from heat. I bought him a bottle of water.
Okay.
That's the only food, souvenir, drink, anything that we've ever, and we don't drink alcohol, either one of us. So We've never had a food item. We've never had a drink. We've never bought anything. So we just do without it. We pack a cooler, and we don't even do restaurants beforehand. We pack coolers, and we go.
Yeah.
And my grown adult friends look at me and go, "You're a grown adult. You can't live like this." I'm like, "Listen, I'm going to 45 shows on this tour. I have no other choice. This is it. I have a mortgage. I have no other choice. You know,
Right.
this is my option. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't apologize for it because, like I said,
Yeah.
I either go to, you know,
Yeah, you're making that
40
choice. You're saying, $5 for a Coke, $5 for pretzel. All of a sudden, I've blown $20 at the concession stand. That is 1/5 of a ticket. So,
you know,
for
there's no doubt. And for the longest time, ticket prices were not
Right.
really expensive. They've gotten kind of expensive, which
Right.
there's nothing you could do there. I try to not think about what I'm spending on tickets, but
Yeah.
I try to block that out of my mind. But, you know, and let's face it, you know, I'm not making big money. I'm a North Carolina teacher.
Right.
But this, as I try to explain to people that know me, that think I'm crazy, this is what I like to do. This is more than just this is what I like to do. This is like travel time. It's father-son time.
Right.
There is no. How many fathers would like to have their child's undivided attention for 15 hours who actually wants to be with them?
Yeah.
People go, you're going all the way to Florida just to see Bruce Springsteen? I go, no. I'm going all the way to Florida to see Bruce Springsteen and have my son in the car with me with his undivided attention for 15 hours.
Yeah. And
You know, and then we're going to.
it's a road trip. It's an adventure. We're eating, bologna sandwiches or whatever. We're going to go to the show. We're going to have great discussions and share, just kind of everything, bond through the trip, and then we take turns driving, and then we can catnap in the car and do spit baths, as in the in the restrooms, service station restrooms, and right.
And you made me laugh because you made me think of something. We were in Europe a couple of years ago, and we weren't doing the hotels because in Europe they don't do the lottery. It's first come first served. So we were going from venue to venue, waiting in long lines, and that's a prime example.
Yeah.
Other people are like, oh, you went all the way to Paris to see Bruce. I'm like, no, I went all the way to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower and all the other things, and happened to see Bruce because I timed it right. But what I started to laugh about is something you said. We were traveling we actually had a rental car that time because since my son's girlfriend's been traveling with us, we do things a little bit different. Like we got youth hostels in Europe this summer. Instead of the second half of the trip, we got youth hostels. The first half, Andrew and I were just bums. We slept at the venue by ourselves. We were the only two out there sometimes. But getting back, one time we pulled into a gas station, and this is in Europe, and I walk in and I go, hey, you got showers here. And I go, how much? And the lady goes, give me your passport. I go, yeah, but how much? She's like, give me your passport. I'm like, how much is the shower? She's like, it's free. Give me your passport. So I walk out to the car, and I'm with two college-age kids who move like snails racing turtles, And I walk out to the car, and I go, hey, they have free shower. That was the last I saw them. They were at a full run, grabbing bags, at a full run towards the thing to take showers because we had been roughing it. And getting a shower is like the greatest luxury when you travel like we do.
I bet.
Yeah, it's funny. But like I said, most of the stories that I have involve these type of catastrophes. The travel in itself is a story.
Yeah.
It's always an adventure. It's fun.
What's the longest you've driven? Like, you made the joke about ending up in California, but how many and maybe you don't know, but consecutive shows, not like going to DC and then back, but actually, like, okay, I'm going to go to Nashville and then I'm going to go to Louisville and then I'm going to go Cleveland or.
Yeah, there's been many times. I know when Andrew and I were traveling on the Devils and Dust tour, I know we hit 16, 17 shows in a row that spanned the whole eastern part of the United States. Then there was in '92 when I did the whole West Coast thing by car, by myself mostly. I went, LA, San Diego, and Arizona, and I just kept, you hit them all, and you're going for weeks at a time sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult now that I have a job, a stinking job that I don't miss school. I've missed one day for actually being sick in 20 years. So I try not to miss school. And that's why earlier you said something about getting time off of work, and I don't miss a lot of work.
Right.
And like we were just mentioned Washington, D.C., there was a stretch in '99 where he was playing 3 nights in Washington. And I went to school, and they let me out at noon, and I drove to D.C. for a show. And then I drove back and taught school in the morning. And I was by myself because I met someone who came from Jersey, and so I drove back by myself. So I actually taught the next day with no sleep. And they let me out at noon, and I drove back to Washington with a different friend and saw the show, drove back that night, through the night, no sleep, and taught school a second day with no sleep. And then I went home and slept like the dead, the best sleep I've ever had. And then I went the third night, I went back to Washington and went to a third show. And that one, of course, I had some sleep in between. But so I went back and forth to Washington from North Carolina 3 straight nights. And that's my rule. I go to every show that I could leave school, make it to the show, and make it back the next day without working. So it's so weird because here's an example. Most people would go to Washington, stay up there and get a hotel and stay for 3 nights.
Right.
Well, I don't want to miss school, so I go back and forth to Washington 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's my method is weird, but because of it, I'm able to because I'm not taking days off, I'm able to go to a lot more shows than I wouldn't be able to.
Right. What so
to answer your question, the farthest I've driven was from Connecticut to Florida, from Connecticut or North Carolina to California. I've done Andrew and Marie and I went to Oklahoma, the same show you and I went to last year, so a couple of years ago. And so those are, I mean, I've been everywhere in the United States basically by car. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Europe and Mexico City. I think I was the only American in Mexico City. No, just kidding. There were very few. That was an awesome show itself, but we could talk about that later.
What so tell me, you've got a couple other stories you listed here. So give me, what are some other things that stand out to you that in it obviously you've kind of talked about the Super Bowl and other things. So share me a little bit about other memorable situations that you had.
Well, of course, the Super Bowl was a great one. I was trying to find things to do for the kids all the time.
Right.
And I contacted the Super Bowl and said, hey, Bruce is playing, and we're a Bruce Club, and I know you need some fans on the field. Could my kids come? And we went back and forth, and they're like, no, but I kept arguing the point. And finally they said, but how would you like to be a volunteer? We're looking for volunteers. So I did. I became that's the one time I took time off of work and went back and forth to the Super Bowl so I could be part of that halftime crowd.
Right.
And halftime, well, I helped push the stages out. And in a great, one of the many horrible parenting jobs that I've done, I pulled my kid out of college and made him go to the Super Bowl so that we could work together as a stage crew building. And Bruce, he's my travel partner. So Bruce has mentioned several times about, his crew takes like days to build the stages and stuff. And he's like, these complete stranger volunteers have to build the Super Bowl stage in 12 minutes or something.
Yeah, so, it's amazing.
It was a lot of fun. It was a real lot of fun just to be part of it. I mean, it was just, just the whole weeks leading up to it and how you're all part of the team, and we're helping Bruce, man. It felt good to be part of that organization, even though it's only in your mind that you're part of this organization. But then we had the rehearsals where we got to see the halftime show several times, and it was, you probably read in the book, it was pouring rain, and the referee who threw the flags foul, and it was just a big, fun time, and we were part of it the whole time, and it was really cool. And kind of another funny story about how I got there. I don't know what made me think of this, but I have a really good friend, and he has a little Toyota car that's good on gas.
Yeah.
I needed to go to Florida, so every once in a while I'd go up to where he works, and when he was out on the road in the company truck, I'd steal his car.
Right.
And so right before I went to the Super Bowl, I ran up and I stole his car. And I took off to Florida in it. And he's calling me every night. And I'm not returning his calls. I call him like after 10 o'clock when I knew he was already in bed. And I'm like, hey, I know you called me, but I was busy. I'll call you back tomorrow. And I would avoid his calls. So I avoided his calls for 2 weeks while I'm in Florida with his car. And I'm driving back with his car. And a morning talk show in our town that's syndicated nationally was going. And I called. They were talking about the Super Bowl and how Bruce didn't play Born in the USA, and they were criticizing some stuff. And I called to tell them what really was going on at the Super Bowl. And they put me right in, and they were talking, and I told them the whole story. And as soon as I hang up the phone, my phone rings, and it's my buddy calling me. And he goes, "So, you won't call me, but you'll call Bob and Sherry." and I go, dude, I was in Florida, and I was afraid you were going to say, bring my stinking car back. And I go, and I needed it. And he goes, tell you what, just keep that thing. So to this day, sitting next to my garage is this old piece of junk blue Toyota that between the two of us, we've had for 15, 20 years.
That is awesome.
But I stole his car to go to the Super Bowl.
Well, for a good reason. Bruce needed you.
Bruce needed me.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, but that was one of the many fun times.
Yeah.
And of course, memorable. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask, as many shows as you've gone, have you had any experiences or brush with greatness with any of the band members?
Oh yeah. I am not the type. When we were in Gothenburg, Sweden this year, we were staying in a tent city.
Yeah.
People started camping out for those two Swedish shows 12 or 14 days early. And so we were in Tent City, a 5-minute walk from Bruce's hotel.
Wow.
And many of the people would go from the Tent City down to Bruce's hotel and wait outside and meet him. We don't do that.
Right.
I just never, that's not my thing. I mean, I've met, in fact, if you go to the webpage I have for the middle school club, there is a little section with, pictures of me and Roy and Bruce's wife. And in fact, Patty Scalpa stole my picture one time. But that's a story all unto itself.
Okay.
But so we have many times we've met him, but usually accidentally, and it's not like a big deal. Like I said, we don't go looking for him.
Right.
He plays those little shows with Joe Grishecki in Pittsburgh, and we've run into him there. And there's been other places we've run into, but we usually leave him alone because that's not our thing. That's just, I've always, same with the kids of the club and my son. It's just like, we don't do idol worship. As much as I've seen him, you think it's crazy, but we don't do the idol worship thing. We really love his live shows. We love his music. We think Bruce is a great person. We're just not going to hang outside his hotel and try just to say we met him, if that makes any sense.
It does, totally.
There was a time in 1996, I took my son to a show in South Carolina, and I was only going to tell half the story, but I don't know why. I'll tell you the whole thing.
Okay.
But it was back when, at the end of the time, it was Tom Joad, Tom Joad, Bruce would come out, and he would autograph stuff and hang out, sit at the edge of the stage, and, sign autographs or whatever. So we were down there in the front one time, and they put Andrew up on stage, and I got a picture of Andrew with his elbow on Bruce's lap, just sitting there like nonchalant, like it's no big deal. I'm going to sit up there with Bruce, and of course everyone's crowding around him, and Andrew's just like, whatever. And so that was a really good one because, I have a picture of my son on stage with Bruce, but let me tell you a quick anecdote or a side note to that. Years later, we go to Columbia, South Carolina. I think it's Columbia. And we have an 8x10 of that picture, and I want to get it autographed for Andrew.
Sure. So
we're on the side of the stage, and the show's over, and Bruce is walking off stage, and he's exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing him that exhausted before. He really looked worn out. And so we lean over, and we got the picture and the pen, and he points at Andrew, and he goes like, is that him? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, okay. And I drop the picture down to him.
Okay.
It goes right under a column of speakers.
Oh, no.
Bruce looked up at us and gave us this look like, are you friggin' kidding me? And he just looks up, and he's got this look on his face, and I just got the embarrassed, and I shrugged my shoulders. I go, don't worry about it,
Yeah.
But you could see Bruce pushing on the column like he's trying to saying to himself, does this thing move? And then his handlers came over and they actually moved the thing for him and got the picture out and signed it, and it's hanging on the wall. But
what a great story, because you just said he's exhausted. He's tired, but he's going, is this him grown up? And so that's so neat he did that.
And he took the time, and he didn't just blow us off. He was really sincere in his wanting to get it, retrieve it, and get it done. And of course, I would have been just because it was just a bad luck. It went right under the speaker. So
sure.
I just kind of like, oh well, that's over. But it was just really cool, and he signed it, and we still have the picture. And like I said, the other part of that, and I don't know if it's okay to tell this story, but Bruce was told an extremely adult-natured story in that South Carolina show.
Okay.
And on the way, he talked about the C word. So
okay.
On the way home, my son, who doesn't have any idea what was funny about the story, doesn't
right.
have any idea what the word means, but Bruce would say, if you could say it, you could do it, and how it used to get him out of trouble with his wife and stuff. He told this whole adult story. And it's Latin for kids. He would say,
right.
kids, it's Latin. It means keep your room clean. So we're driving home, and Andrew is saying the word and saying, if you could say it, you could do it. And the whole way back, I'm going, my God, his mother's never going to let him go to another show. My God.
Yeah.
But by the time he got home, he only remembered the line, if you could say it, you could do it. He forgot the big, long word. And he still thought it was funny because everyone else laughed. He didn't know it was funny. But, it's like, but that show had all sorts of stories attached to it.
That's all.
And, and so he almost never got to go to see another Bruce show again.
I bet.
And I couldn't say don't, I just was hoping he'd forget by the time we got back to North Carolina.
Exactly.
And thankfully he did.
So we're going to wrap it up. This has been another wonderful time talking to you. I always love your passion for the kids and for Bruce and his music, and you know what I love, a lot of times there, when you see like Ken Bird's documentary on baseball, you see that baseball is a thing that parents and their children enjoy together, and to have this bond of you and your son, and now your son's girlfriend, right? Because I saw one of your notes, they met at a show.
She was a young girl from New Jersey that used to go to Bruce shows by herself, had no one to go with because it wasn't the type of music anyone in her family or friends listened to, and she would go by herself. And we met her just waiting in a line one time, and she wrote a blog about it. She said, this tall guy that I'm going to marry someday is behind me in line, and he's with his dad, this hiker guy running back and forth, and she's going, and he keeps coming back going, I think I might have found us one ticket, where we almost might have one. And she wrote in the blog something about, they probably came like an hour ride without tickets. Are they stupid? And she kept writing in the blog.
Yeah. But
in actuality, we had come 758 miles without tickets. And we never buy them ahead of time. We try to find them. And
right.
So, but she was just in line with us, and then we got to kind of join our little crowd, and they stayed in touch, but it was nothing more than a casual thing. And then we invited her to go to a trip to Minnesota that I really wasn't going to go to, but I invited her to go. And when she said yes, then I always look for an excuse to go to a show. And as soon as she said yes, we had an excuse. And that's really the first time they were like really hung out together. And then from then on, it's been years, and they're now, she's part of our traveling party every time. And she's a great, great person. And we all love Maria. She's now passed UNC Law and is a working lawyer in New York.
That is awesome.
We won't hold that against.
No.
One last thing.
Yes.
I know you like to wrap it up, and I never let you. But one last thing, because it's a side note to an earlier story. Remember, I was from way up top. I was in looking down on my friend who was on stage, and I was just sitting there steaming because he was on stage. And back in like I said, I've had opportunities to jump up on stage, especially in Europe this summer when we were doing it, and that's not my thing. I don't have to do any of that. But because my friend had been up there, I had to do it. So I was in Cleveland, and it was 1992, and I was outside, and I was talking to different people, and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be on stage with Bruce tonight. And I know when I would tell people that and I'd walk away, they'd go, that dude's a freaking idiot. That dude's an idiot,
Sure.
And I knew it. You know how people, when you walk away from someone that has that thought, they're like, it. When you walk away, you go, they're saying that dude's an idiot. Well, I got on stage with Bruce in 1992. It was, they came out into the crowd for Glory Days like I knew they would. I had the perfect seat for it, so I was able to jump right, jump, and we jumped together. But while I'm on stage, I was pointing to everyone I had told, I'm going to be up here. And they all said, no, you're not. And I was up on stage. So, and it was really cool. But that was it. That was the end of the story. I was on stage. This is back when not everyone was doing it.
That's awesome.
But a couple of years ago, I'm at a show, and a lady came up to me, and she said, I remember you from Cleveland 20 years ago. You told us you were going to be on stage. When you walked away, we said, that dude's an idiot. And then she said, all our jaws dropped. When we looked up on stage, and there you were. She goes, holy cow. And 20 years later, she found me at a Bruce show and said, hey, I remember you from that night. So,
that is awesome.
Yeah.
Michael, hopefully he's going to tour later this year, and you and I get the chance to hang out before the show. And you know what? I might buy you something to eat.
You can't, because let me tell you, I was at the Mexico City show. I told you I went to Mexico City. I wrote the review for Backstreets. I was there, and the drinks were really, really inexpensive. They were like probably $2 American or some crazy number.
Yeah. And
I went to buy one because they were so cheap. And I go, you know what? All those years that I wouldn't let my son have anything, I just felt like if I did that, it would have made me even a worse father than I already am by, having it when he's not there. And so I wouldn't do it. The only thing, a good friend of mine was about to, she had just bought like a whole big dinner thing with chicken tender type thing. She goes, these are going in the trash. She goes, we know you never buy stuff in an arena, but we're throwing these in the trash. And so that's the only food item, but she got it and she was going to toss them. But otherwise, my rule is we get nothing inside. We don't break our rules because we can't compromise our values.
That's right. That's right. I understand. There you go.
And if you and remember I told you a story about the river and staying at the hotel? We rode up with my friend, and he got a hotel room at the Sheraton. And he said, Mike, I know you don't usually stay at hotels. He goes, but here's the deal. It's a room with 2 beds. You and your son are welcome to stay with me because I've got the room anyways. He goes, but I know you. You could just stay in the car in the parking lot if you want. So, but of course we stayed in the room. But he was like joking because everyone who knows me knows. It's like, I know how you are. You just stay at the arena. You stay in your car. You stay at a rest area. This is how you live. You're not normal.
That is you're doing what you need to do to see as many shows. And it makes total sense. And I totally agree.
But I will be glad to buy you a drink just because I've enjoyed this. And I hope he does tour because I told him at the book signing, as you remember from the last time, that he owes us a show in North Carolina. I have a bunch of kids that were excited to go and who will probably never get to go if he doesn't come soon because I'll lose touch with all because I'm at a different school now. Yeah. And but he owes us one, and I told him he owes us one. So
I totally agree.
I said it nicely, but
you did. You were nice. That's good. Mike, thank you so much. This was, as always, a lot of fun. I just love hearing your stories, and I'm hoping that somewhere further up on the road, you and I will get to share a beverage together and get to visit and talk. Thank you, listeners. If you want to share your Bruce Springsteen story, reach out to me at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. I have a Twitter account at setlistingbruce, and we have a Facebook page, Set Listing Bruce. Let us know. Michael, if someone wants to reach you, how do they find the stories of the kids and the schools? Remind us.
Well, if I would just do a Google search, Jukebox Graduates, and
Okay.
you will get a blog written by a wonderful writer named Karen Rose. We named our club Jukebox Graduate, not knowing who Karen Rose was at the time, but also never thinking it would matter. But
Yeah.
if you Google Jukebox Graduates, you'll find our club, and the webpage is still active. It's got little downloadable clips of a lot of the in-tags that the kids have done, and the pictures of the kids and the trips and stuff. And it's interesting. There's contact information, anything you want. It's all on the webpage.
Yeah. That's awesome. I just think that is great. We're going to end with the stars are burning bright like some mystery uncovered. I'll keep moving through the dark with you in my heart, my blood brother. And I feel like you're my blood brother, and I am honored to call you long distance friend. And listeners, thank you so much. We will talk to you soon. And there we go. Great episode. Once again, so much fun stories. Thank you.